You know what's strange? Toxic people don't fear the ones who fight back. They don't fear aggression. They don't fear anger. In fact, they've built their entire strategy around it. They know exactly what to do when someone gets loud, when someone breaks, when someone begs. What they cannot handle is a person who has already seen their moves before they play them. The people who make toxic people most uncomfortable aren't the loudest in the room. They're the ones who have been broken, rebuilt, and learned something in the process. Something called traumatic intelligence. And if you have it, there is a reason certain people in your life keep their distance. Not because you're dangerous, but because your awareness gives them nothing easy to control. To someone who survives by controlling others, you are completely unreadable. And unreadable people cannot be controlled. Let's establish what we're actually talking about. Traumatic intelligence is not a diagnosis. It's not a clinical term you'll find in a textbook. It is not a gift. And it is not proof that pain was good for you. It is an adaptation. But this video is not about trauma. In general, it is about what happens when that awareness meets someone who needs your reaction to feel powerful. Here's the premise. When a person grows up in an unpredictable environment, where moods shifted without warning, where love felt conditional, where the wrong expression at the wrong moment had real consequences, the brain doesn't simply survive, it adapts. The nervous system learns to read a room before anyone speaks. It learns to track micro-expressions, sense tonal shifts, detect the gap between what someone says and what they actually mean. This isn't intuition in the mystical sense. It's pattern recognition, built not in a classroom, built in survival. The result is a form of intelligence that looks almost quiet from the outside, but it runs extraordinarily deep. And to someone who operates through deception, manipulation, and emotional control, that depth is the most threatening thing they will ever encounter. Not because trauma made you better, but because your mind learned something expensive. Here's the first reason toxic people are terrified of you. You read people faster than they can build a mask. Picture this. They walk toward you with a smile that doesn't quite reach their eyes. A compliment that sounds like one, but lands like something else. A question designed to seem innocent, but pointed directly at your insecurity. And somewhere in you, not loud, not dramatic, something notices. Before your conscious mind has processed a single word. That's not paranoia. That's your nervous system doing in 1 second what took years to build. But awareness only becomes power when you learn to separate real patterns from old fear. Not every person is manipulating you. Not every silence is a threat. Not every small change means danger. But repeated patterns deserve attention. Toxic people depend on time. They need you to be a little slow, a little trusting, a little willing to extend the benefit of the doubt, long enough for the damage to be done. Someone with traumatic intelligence doesn't give them that window, because the body knows before the mind does, and the body remembers everything it has ever survived. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, but in someone who has healed, it transforms into something more precise. Not anxiety, clarity, and clarity is something a toxic person cannot survive in someone they're trying to manipulate. It's not just that you read them, it's that you read them and say nothing about it. And that silence, that complete absence of a reaction they were counting on, is where their plan starts to fall apart. Here's what this intelligence actually does to their strategy. Number 1, their false kindness doesn't land because you've seen it before. The compliment that arrives right before a request. The warmth that only appears when they need something from you. Your brain has a file on that pattern, and it flags it instantly. Number 2, your silence makes them nervous. Most people fill silence with explanation, with reassurance, with the words that toxic people then use against them. You don't. You sit in the quiet. You wait. And the silence starts to press on them because they need your reaction to feel in control. Without it, they're just waiting alone. Number 3, the gap between their words and their behavior is visible to you. They say one thing, they do another. Most people argue with the words. You watch the behavior. You note the inconsistency. You say nothing, and something in them feels seen in a way they never intended. Number 4, you don't need their validation to feel sure of yourself. The most effective tool a toxic person carries is the suggestion that you need their approval. They position themselves as the authority on your worth, your choices, your sanity. But a person whose sense of self was built in hardship, not in other people's opinions, doesn't have that door. They knock. There's no answer. There never was. And number 5, your memory is long and quiet. You don't forget, not out of bitterness. The body simply holds what the mind tries to release. And someone who cannot make you forget what they've done cannot fully control the narrative. And control over the narrative is everything to them. Each of these alone would be threatening. Together, they form something a toxic person has never learned how to face. Someone who sees them clearly, without flinching. Here's the part that matters most. The real power isn't any of those 5 things. The real power is stillness. Not cold silence, not calculated distance, not the absence of feeling. Stillness that comes from someone who has already sat with the worst of themselves and come through it. Picture this. They push, they test. They wait for you to react the way everyone eventually reacts. With panic, with justification, with a desperate need to be believed. And you just look at them. Not because you don't feel anything, but because feeling everything and still choosing not to perform it is the most difficult skill a human being can develop. And you've been practicing it your whole life. Here's what's really happening when you do this. They cannot find a lever. There's no approval to withhold. There's no insecurity to amplify. There's no reaction to harvest. And without a lever, there is no control. A toxic person without control is not comfortable. It is not calm. It is a person watching their entire operating system fail in front of someone who doesn't even look alarmed. That stillness isn't passive. It is the hardest won thing you have ever built, and they resent you for it. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you keep being proof of something they will never understand. That it is possible to move through the world without needing to control it. Here's the truth they don't want you to know. Every time a toxic person has targeted your composure, every time they questioned your silence, pushed against your calm, tried to pull you into the noise they live in, they were doing you a favor. They were confirming, through their own panic, exactly how powerful your stillness is. You were never too quiet. You were never too still. You were never too much of whatever they told you was the problem. You were exactly yourself, and that, to someone who has spent their entire life managing other people's versions of themselves, is the most threatening thing in the room. The sharpness you carry wasn't a gift. It was paid for, at a very real cost, in years that deserve better. But it is yours, and no one can take back what your mind built while it was learning to survive. But the goal is not to stay guarded forever. The goal is to become clear enough to recognize danger without forgetting how to recognize peace. If this video found you today, something in you already knew all of this. You just needed someone to say it out loud. Tell me in the comments, which of the 5 signs felt most like yours? Silence, pattern, clarity, stillness, or memory? Comment one word below. I read every single one. Subscribe if you want more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one.